to the live stream community. Welcome to a reading in the Bible from the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm Pastor Lou Kilgore, and this is the ongoing class where we read, we discuss, we talk to each other, and we're happy to have you listen in either live now or at some point in the future. And I also welcome your comments. If you would like to comment, you can comment on the YouTube channel, or you can send an email to me at revlouie@aol.com. And that's REVLOUIE at AOL.com. Okay, so we're about ready to begin reading, and I think we had a volunteer who said they would, right?
Yes, 65, correct?
That's correct.
Psalm 65.
Yep.
To the leader, a psalm of David, song. Praise is due to you, O God in Zion, and to you shall vows be formed. O you who answer prayer, you all flesh shall come. When deeds of iniquity overwhelm us, you forgive our transgressions. Happy are those whom you choose and bring near to live in your courts. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of your house, your holy temple. By awesome deeds, you answer us with deliverance. O God of our salvation, you are the hope of all the ends of the earth and of the farthest seas. By your strength, you establish the mountains. You are girded with might. You silence the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, the tumult of the peoples. Those who live earth's farthest bounds are awed by your signs. You make the gateways of the morning and the evening shout for joy. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The river of God is full of water. You provide the people with rain, for so you have prepared it. You water its furrows abundantly, setting its ridges, softening it with showers, and blessing its growth. You crown the year with your bounty. Your wagon tracks overflow with richness. The pastures of the wilderness overflow. The hills gird themselves with joy. The meadows clothe themselves with flocks. The valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy.
Okay. So it's interesting again that to me, in a psalm that seeks to give acknowledgement and praise to God for all the bounty and the beauty of the earth, the bountiful harvest, it's still this idea that our sins and our transgressions are involved somehow in this interaction. It doesn't quite come out and say, if we don't live our lives the way God wants us to, then, this bounty is going to disappear, the earth will dry up, and the harvests will be terrible. But it's there.
Franklin Lakes is drying up.
Yeah, everywhere is drying up. And so I want to know who's sinning. I think we should go house to house, and we should root them out. I can't hear what you're saying, Debbie.
You're muted, Debbie.
Yep.
Yeah, I said I think we should pick someone and sacrifice them. That would work too.
Are you going to volunteer?
No.
No volunteers. No, it's got to be against their will.
Yeah, I'll be on the committee that picks the person.
Oh, how nice of you.
Weren't we supposed to put a fleece out and see if it gets dew on it or something like that?
Yeah, well, that was just to decide whether you were gonna go to war or not. You know, that was.
Oh, that little thing.
Yeah, that little thing, but here, it's sort of like Jonah and on the ship, they're looking for who's causing the big waves, and boy, they're all gonna die, and Jonah steps up and says, all right, I confess, it's me. Throw me overboard and you'll all be okay. So, I don't know, I think that we should try to practice some of these principles. If we're gonna go back to making the world great again, maybe we ought to go back and
Right.
right? We ought to unearth some of these. This hasn't been tried in a while. Maybe that's what we're doing with the deportation of all these people.
Maybe.
We're just
Must be some of them. It's because of them. That's right.
it.
You
That's what
figured
it
it out.
is. That is what it is. That's what it is. They're the sinners. They're the thieves and the robbers and the drug addicts and all that. If we throw them out, and then it'll really start to rain again.
Oh, we don't have to throw out the guys who cheat on their wives and hire girls to come and give them sex. They're okay, right?
Well,
Of course. They're manly men.
Right.
yeah, you got to give a man his due, right? You got to give him his freedom to be himself. I mean, come on. That's how you know they're real men.
You
I
don't want
got
these
you.
girly men. Come on.
Sissies, right? Don't need these sissies in there.
You said to beware. We're on. We're broadcasting out.
I know.
Okay.
I know, and somehow I feel more motivated because of that.
Wow.
It just, I don't know, it just sounds right. It sounds like this is the right thing. This is the ancient theology that, suffering and struggle comes because somebody's doing something wrong. And if we either ourselves confess those sins and the brokenness, or we find those people and we, jettison them, then we'll get back to the bounty of God. It'll start raining, and it'll stop flooding. All these terrible floods. I still can't believe the devastation that's happened down in Tennessee and Virginia. I mean, it's just it's astounding. We get. We have a tolerance for big news like this that lasts about a week and a half.
Right. Yep.
And once it gets past that, we go, well, we've seen these stories before. What else is new?
Right. Exactly.
And
On
unfortunately,
to the next tragedy.
yeah, and it's brutal to be one of those communities because, boy, when the attention of the world goes away from you, so does all the support, all the encouragement, all the promises people thought they would make to help, things to get better. It doesn't hang around for a long time. So we don't hear much about it anymore. Mm-hmm. And things haven't gotten any better.
Couldn't be that we're burning too many fossil fuels. Could it? Nah.
No.
The poor, I can't remember her name, the woman who's the head of FEMA, they were grilling her today because of some stuff that got talked about when they were trying to help people down south. There was all this misinformation out there. And somehow now she's on the hot seat having to defend her agency. And a lot of them were threatened because a lot of this misinformation was out there and it was all total baloney. Yeah.
Yeah,
But,
the big story was, don't take any help from them. They're going to take your land away from you.
Exactly. How do you defend yourself? What do you say? And they're asking her, like, well, what did you do? Well, I was hoping she would just say it was a whole load of bullshit.
Yeah.
But she didn't say that. She was being very, calm and dignified in the face of ridiculousness.
I think there must be a textbook somewhere that all these things, this happens in every disaster. In every disaster, somebody comes along and convinces the people who have been harmed and flooded that the help that is coming is not help, that the help is actually coming to take advantage of you. The government is not really coming to help you out. They're going to take your land. They're going to give you loans, and then they're going to foreclose on the loans, and it's a time of vulnerability. And in a time of vulnerability, there are people, I don't know what it is with human beings. There are people who come in and prey on the vulnerable. What is it with us? What is it with human beings? I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Well, I don't understand, I don't understand a lot of, but verse 4, happy are those whom you choose and bring near to live in your courts. What are the courts? I don't have a comment on that in my Bible.
What verse is that?
4.
5. I'm looking to see. Yeah, I don't have a comment directly on that either. Happy are those who are called.
It doesn't go on. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of your house, your holy temple. Are they talking about the courts in the temple?
I don't think so, because in some ways, this is addressing God who claims the whole earth, horizon to horizon, as God's courts and God's temple. That's a very broad view of, God's place and where you meet God. I'm looking to see if there's anything specific again.
So you think the courts are your earth, you're
Yeah.
saying?
So this is a paragraph here from the beatitude-like statement in verse 5 expresses the blessed state of those who are chosen to draw near to Yahweh and dwell in the courts of his temple. How blessed, how rewarding is life to be and to be envied. The reference is to that which is desirable. I don't know. It's not helping. Does this wish for nearness to God and dwelling in his temple courts apply to priestly personnel only? So I guess they're saying they are talking about the temple. Does it include all who come to the temple area to worship? I don't know. The request in verse 5 seems to support the interpretation that the worshiping community is intended here. All those who are acceptable in the worship of Yahweh and potentially every Israelite. They have a universal expectation, every human being who comes to Yahweh. The satisfying goodness of the house of God is not defined, but we should think of the spiritual refreshment of festival worship, especially in the forgiveness of sins and the fellowship of sacrificial meals. I don't know if that helps, but...
I'm still trying to figure out so the court is like an area rather than an actual court. They're not
it's the
talking
courts,
about
right.
court of law.
Right, it's like courtyard, in the
Right.
courtyards of
Okay.
God. Those
Yeah.
who dwell in your courtyards. May we be sated with the goodness of your house and your holy temple. I think it's pretty ambitious. The writer goes on to say that, "O God of our salvation, the one who is trusted by all the ends of the earth." Really?
Yeah.
Really? Is God trusted by all the ends of the earth and the distant seas? I guess maybe he's talking about the mountains and the trees and the rivers, and that they trust God because he stills the raging seas and the raging waves and the turmoil of the peoples. I don't know.
He does say those who live at earth's farthest bounds are awed by your signs.
Yeah.
So that would mean the people of the whole earth.
Right, the whole population. And they're awed by the morning, and they're awed by the evening, and they sing for joy. And then you come, God, and you visit the land, and you give it abundance, greatly enriching it. And the channel from God is full of water. Yeah. When I was reading this the first time, I was reminded of being on the farm in southern York County when the corn was planted and was about knee-high, and it would be hot and dry, and then all of a sudden a thunderstorm would come up, and it would rain so hard. And as a child, I mean a young child, but we would go out, we loved to go out on the front porch of the farmhouse and sit and watch it rain. And I don't know, we didn't talk much. You just watch the rain come down. And then it would pool in the driveway, in the dirt driveways, and in the valleys, in the fields, and it would run across, and you just had this sense of the image of this is, that the land was drenched. The land is drenched, and the plow furrows are filled with water. There's so much water would fall from the sky. And I think in a more primitive, more basic time, they didn't look at it so scientifically. They just looked at it and were amazed. Where does this water fall from? It just falls from the sky. And it produces a bountiful crops and beautiful grapes. And that's got to be just from the hand of God, right? God just decides to open up the channels in heaven and let water fall to the earth. It's beautiful imagery. And I say, a summer rainstorm can stir that kind of inspiration in me in a second. I don't care if there is lightning and thunder. I like thunder and lightning.
Exciting.
I do too. I kind of do.
As long as you're not in a lake.
Yeah, that's right. You're not out in the middle of the lake. Yeah. So, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to grab a hold of here except that, there's beautiful poetry about celebrating what God does to bring beauty and life and bounty to the earth. There's a little bit of the wrinkle in talking about the sinful deeds. The sinful deeds overwhelm us, but it seems like that God's pardon is sufficient for all that. And the rain comes anyway. Jesus says the rain falls on the just and the unjust. That it's not selective like that. So I guess we have to dismiss our idea that that the rain is not falling because there's a few extra unjust people around us.
I guess not. Oh, gee.
Yeah.
We don't have to sacrifice anybody.
Well, I suppose we should be glad, because if that were the case, it would never rain again.
True. Oh, my.
The earth itself would enter into a drought the way things are now. But we're not saying anything critical.
No.
All right, well, let's read another psalm. That one was short. And let's see what else we can stir up.
To the leader, a psalm. Make a joyful noise to God. Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
As All the earth, sing the glory of his name. Give to him glorious praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. Because of your great power, your enemies cringe before you. All the earth worships you. They sing praises to you. Sing praises to your name. Come and see what God has done. Excuse me. He is awesome in his deeds among mortals. He turned the sea into dry land. They passed through the river on foot. There we rejoiced in him, who rules by his might forever. Whose eyes keep watch on the nations, for let the rebellious not exalt themselves. Bless our God, O peoples. Let the sound of his praise be heard. Sorry. Who has kept us among the living and has not let our feet slip. For you, O God, have tested us. You have tried us as silver has dried. You brought us into the net. You laid burdens on our backs. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water. You have brought us out to a spacious place. I will come into your house with burnt offerings. I will pay you my vows, those that my lips uttered. And in my mouth promised when I was in trouble, I will offer to you burnt offerings of failings with this sacrifice of rams. I will make an offering of bulls and goats. Salah. Come and hear, all who fear God, and I will tell you, he has done for me. I cried aloud to him, and he was extolled with my tongue. If I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. But truly God has listened. He has given heed to the words of my prayer. Blessed be God, because he has not rejected my prayer or removed his steadfast love from me.
Well, welcome, Judy.
Hi, sorry to be late.
It's all right. We're
Yeah.
reading Psalm 66 right now.
Okay.
Comments? Anybody? This sounds like hymns that I know,
Yeah.
right? The phrasing in here, I think, has been captured in hymns because it's pretty amazing, some of it. He will not let our foot slip. And then I was thinking that we used to sing a song back in the Pentecostal church, some through the fire, some through the water. God leads his children along. How does it go? All through some through the fire, some through I don't know. There's something that he leads us all through, I think, which is his grace. But that was a big song we used to sing all the time.
Says God leads his dear children along.
Yeah.
In shady green pastures, so rich and so sweet, God leads his dear children along. Where the waters cool flow, bathes the weary one's feet, God leads his dear children along. Some through the water, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood.
That's it. That is it.
I was okay until the blood came.
Yep. Some through the fire, some through the flood. Yeah, I can hear it. So this is a celebration of the one who keeps us.
Right?
It's not that life is easy.
Right?
God tests us like refining silver is refined. And you have your foot in a snare every now and then, but God will release you. God will help you.
This comment says, Thanksgiving to God for help in danger. In this community Thanksgiving, an individual calls upon the whole world to acknowledge God's rescue of the people from danger. So don't give up.
Yeah, don't ever give up, because
God is still with us.
God is right there with you in the middle of the fire. I don't know what that's like. We went through fire and water, but you brought us out to abundance. So,
It's the story of the Hebrew Exodus,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
In verse 6, he turned the sea into dry land,
yep,
and they passed through the river on foot.
yep.
So you could use this psalm to praise God during the Passover as well.
Yep. But I think the point is, it applies. So yeah, it happened in history, and remember, God delivered, in signs and wonders and marvelous ways back then. But it's something that you should count on in your contemporary life. This is how God will relate to you. God is a deliverer. He's the one who I love this phrase, he keeps us among the living. Yeah, so that's us, right? Here we are, there's 5 of us, we're among the living.
Right?
Well, we think so.
Well, the very next time someone asks me how I am, I'm going to say, well, God's keeping me among the living.
Good phrase for now.
Yeah, I've been kept among the living. That's right.
Yeah.
Praise be to God, right?
Oh.
Look at the later part, though. Again, we have this, I don't know how to describe it, except this soiling of good news, because in verse 18 or 19, had I been guilty in my heart, my Lord would not have heard me.
Right.
What does that mean? Guilty in my heart. But God did hear me and listened to my voice in prayer. Do you remember the controversy about 10 years ago, where Christians and evangelicals and Presbyterians got all embroiled in a question of whether God hears the prayers of people who aren't, I don't know what, like if they're not Christians or if they're not believers? Does God hear the prayers of, just regular human beings? Big controversy about that,
What was the outcome?
Well, I don't think it ever got resolved. It just got old. But, in my mind, I thought, really? You're gonna tell me that there are people who are righteous enough to be heard by God, and then there are people who are unrighteous enough? What happened to the sinner's prayer, the guy on the cross? Right?
Right.
That was my contribution. God, I think God, what do you think? Do you think that God hears the prayers of all people?
That's what we understand, sure. Mm-hmm. That's what we believe.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because, if the stain of guilt in my heart is going to lead God to not have heard me, then I'm in trouble, because I've been praying to somebody who's never heard my voice.
Oh, boy.
I mean, what about, Debbie, what about in Islam? I mean, do you have to go through certain purifications in order for your prayers to be heard?
No. Actually, yes and no. It depends. There's highly ritualized prayer, which is the Farz prayer, which is the obligatory prayer, and you should be, make wudu. That means wash ahead of time if you have soiled yourself in some way. And then you pray your obligatory prayer. But dua or regular prayer can be said any time of the day, in fact, all day long, in no matter what state you are. And God hears you, and God even can hear your unspoken prayer. So,
good.
psalmist is also saying, God hears what is in my heart. And so in Islam, we do obligatory prayer, that is a ritualistic type of prayer. Those are the 5 daily prayers. And then there's time to remember God all day long.
Right.
So that's not restricted to just those ritualistic prayers. But
Again,
so yes, I would say God hears everyone. I think most people believe that God doesn't turn off, oh gosh, that's a Methodist, I won't listen to them, or
Right.
those Jehovah Witnesses are at it again, I'm going to ignore them. No, I think most of us believe that God hears everything. If someone is speaking to God,
yeah.
God is listening.
It's, again, I get sent to flashbacks to my teenage years in the church my dad used to lead. And we had prayer meeting every Wednesday. And so we all went to church on Wednesday, adults and kids and everybody. And it was like an hour long, just silent prayer. But the pastor would ask, what would you like us to pray for you about? But then there were always that point where the leader of the prayer group would ask for hands for people who have unspoken prayers. And I always thought that was kind of fascinating, You could be in the church, you didn't have to say what it was, all you had to do was raise your hand and say, yeah, I have unspoken prayers.
That's,
And do we sometimes have unspoken prayers that we don't even realize
Right.
that we have them?
Well, and there, again, I'm trying to quickly think of where it is, but, there's an understanding in some of the Psalms and throughout even the New Testament that almost like our spirits, our souls can speak to God even in ways we do not understand. So that God has the ability to hear not just what we pray, but that God hears even when we don't know how to pray. Even when we don't, Paul says that comes up in the prayers in the Book of Common Prayer, in prayers for the funerals, which is, Lord, hear our prayers, but hear us even for that which we don't know how to pray for.
Isn't it sometimes referred to as the yearnings of our heart?
Yes. What is it? It's, oh God, you know the desires of our hearts, and I don't know. I had it there for a minute, and then it went out of my head. But there is that sense of, that prayer, you can do prayer in a formal way, like you were saying, Debbie, and you have the ritualistic prayers, the Lord's Prayer in our tradition. You have the prayers that are known and prayed. But there is a sense in which life itself is a prayer. And that it's a conversation with God. The Apostle Paul says, pray and never stop praying.
Pray without ceasing.
Yeah, pray without ceasing. And that doesn't mean, stay on your knees and have your head bowed and your eyes closed. It means just that continuing conversation in our lives with a sense of God's presence and God's listening to us.
In Islam, we call it taqwa, or awareness of God, God awareness. I guess, there's words for that in every religion. Thinking of the Buddhist meditations and all, I mean, you're always trying to be aware of God, that
Right.
God is always watching, always with you. And I can't think of any religion that doesn't have that concept.
Right. Yeah, and then, and to be fair to the verse that comes later about the guilty in their heart, I think I can't think of the illustrations now, but our traditions are all full of the idea that if we hide from our guilt, from our fault, if we hide from it, there will be a sense in which our awareness of God will be cut off, because we block the communion with God by not being honest with ourselves. But that doesn't talk about what God is doing. God is still listening. We may purposefully try to forget that God exists and that God has a calling in our lives, but God hasn't forgotten. This is still the God who is praised in this beginning. This is still the God who's raised a joyful shout to God, all the earth. Sing of the glory of God's name, and it's pervasive, it's everywhere. Even though some of the specifics of this psalm are reminiscent of the acts of deliverance in the Exodus, there's still a sense that in that story, the nature of God is revealed. It's not just that one event. It's that this is what God does all the time.
We're talking about the universality of God as well as the constant presence of God. And that's basically what I'm getting from this, is that it's not that God is there all the time and God is everywhere all the time.
Did you say it's not that?
It is. No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
what I am getting from it. The universality and the constant presence.
Yeah, and reminding us that God isn't only with us when things are going well, but that in fact, sometimes in adversity, in difficulty, in hardship, the presence of God can be more clear. We can have a clearer sense of God with us in that time. Now, I don't think that happens to everybody. Sometimes people go through hardship, and
Right.
it convinces them that God doesn't care, God doesn't exist, and that's all just a bunch of hooey. But for those that are, I guess, lucky enough to have that sense that even in hardship, even in very difficult times, God is right there with them, and if they survive, they know it's only because God brought them through. God has brought us through the floods. God has brought us through the fire.
God has brought us through the election.
God
I was just thinking the same
beyond.
thing. I was just thinking, it's a lot of work that has to be done.
Yeah.
God has a lot of listening.
Are you sure we're through?
No, we're just starting on that journey, but
I thought the water,
God should be with us,
I
so.
thought the water and the
Yes.
fire were just at us now.
There's more cause for prayer now than ever before. It's just,
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's members of my family that feel like their prayers have been answered. And my response is, nope, my prayers have just begun.
exactly.
You know.
Oh, well.
And my prayers, I was thinking about this before, my prayers at this point aren't focused on my own loss. They're not. They're focused on my worries and for those who are beside me. I mean, I have a life of privilege. I don't, I'm a white man in a world that favors and empowers white men.
Right.
So my prayers are not for me, but my prayers are for my world. What is happening? What's going to happen in my world? Will vulnerable people be safe?
Right.
Will people be able to build on the gains that have been made for gay and lesbian people, for, and I started into a kind of a litany in my sermon on Sunday, and I was sort of appealing to people to learn something about, who transgender people are. Please learn. And the one thing afterwards I reflect sometimes, and I thought, learn what's happening and happened to the Immokalee workers. Learn. If you take some time and you learn about their conditions and things, your prayers couldn't be otherwise. You would never pray for what happened to the slaves that were brought from Africa to have experienced that here. No person I know would ever pray that would take place. But we live as if it didn't happen, or it's not happening.
That it doesn't affect us, that we're, that's what, I think I've mentioned before, that here at Cedar Crest, we're planning, we do a pride event and do every year, but we want to focus on transgenders. But we've decided that as a subcommittee of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging Committee, that we first have to do the study ourselves. And, it's amazing how many books and movies and, writings and, I just watched, I'm not sure, I think I sent it to Debbie and Lou about the transgender. There was just a 4 or 5 minute YouTube about a mother and child. And it's just so powerful to listen to the experience. I had dinner tonight with a woman whose son died, I think about 20 years ago, of AIDS. And, how difficult it was for her, and how her son didn't want her to say anything to anyone. And, the whole feeling of being isolated, I guess, that so many LGBTQ people feel.
Yeah, it's isolated, and I mean, I know there's a flamboyance to the people who are out and proud and all of that, but the rest of the population is just living among us, and they're hiding in terms of being worried about hatred being expressed where it's popular, and that a child who has to go through the trauma of a sex change operation and trying to adjust, that then also has to be worried about getting beat up in high school because of that, from people who do not understand at all. I don't hear any understanding at all. I hear people say, well, it's just boys who want to be girls.
Right.
Like, nothing further from the truth. These are
It,
people.
Would you mention Sunday?
Yeah.
This is a choice.
Yeah, if that's they're a choice, a lifestyle choice, and it doesn't match with anything that is out there in the world in terms of what we know. It just is not what it is. It just is not. And there's
denying a transgender person the right to go to the bathroom in Congress.
Yeah. So crazy.
Ridiculous. In
So crazy.
Congress.
Yeah.
This just highlights the absurdity and the hatred and the meanness that people have, and think it's laudable to act that way.
Yeah.
And these are adults. What about our children that, like you were saying, Lou? I mean, kids in school picked on and beaten and I don't know. And if it's not directly affecting you, how do you feel about it? You ignore it? What do you do?
Right.
Or if it's bothering you, learn something about it. That's the thing is, if you just take some time to expand your mind a little bit and learn a little more than what you already know, you might come to understand what is beyond your current level of education. I mean, the topics are broad for this for me. The whole idea of the recompense or the payback or the paying of, what do they call it, for African Americans who've been deprived of land and in some places they're working to sort of restitution,
Right.
right? And then you listen to people who don't understand the issue at all, and they fly off the handle with opinions about, oh, how ridiculous and stupid is that, Okay, you know what? You obviously don't know what you're talking about. Because well-educated people are taking this seriously, and they're looking into trying to figure out a way to right the wrongs of history. Is that terrible? I don't think that's awful. I don't know. I'm not growing in my arrogance about what I know. I'm just growing in my frustration with how people are satisfied with not knowing.
Right.
With so much they don't know or they don't understand, to say, gee, what's this thing about, the farmers in Florida? Maybe we should learn what that's about, Maybe we should hear a little bit about what that is and see where we end up.
Denial is a big thing. A big thing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, it is. And all the 60 minutes in the world don't correct that.
What you know won't hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. 74 million people in denial.
I just feel like the world is taking a turn to be a meaner, it's not like it was always, trouble-free, but all of a sudden it just seems to be meaner and,
Yeah, right. Back to the days of the gladiators. I mean, yeah, just awful.
Yeah.
But so,
I guess it's fear. People are frightened, but, you don't have to turn to violence every time something bothers you.
yeah,
But that seems like what's happening. It's all over.
yeah,
That Malala Yousafzai was on TV early this morning, and I guess they've made what's her name? The actress Lawrence is her last name, a blonde, and some other director. The three of them were together talking about a movie they've just made called Bread and Roses, and it's about the plight of the Afghan women who have now been completely silenced. They're not allowed to speak in public. They're not allowed to go out unaccompanied by a male member of their family. They're not allowed to work.
yeah,
They're not allowed to sing.
yeah. They've disappeared.
This is it. And this is for people who consider themselves religious. It's
That's right.
but this kind of stuff is spreading all over the world. All of these countries that are becoming dictatorships, they always single out a segment of society that they don't like, and they make them scapegoats for whatever is bothering them.
That's right.
And in this country now, it seems like it's going to be, migrants. So get ready.
Yeah, That's right.
And how do you stop it? How do you speak out against it? How do we organize to resist this kind of stuff is, I guess, what we're all trying to figure out now, but it does, prayer never hurts.
You know, in
Probably
Afghanistan,
better get used to not having fresh vegetables.
True.
Well, we're going through a whole time of mourning and grief and loss, but at the same time, you become impatient for something proactive.
yes.
Okay, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward instead of? And I guess it's a necessary time, but how long does the grief period last before you begin to get up and begin to think, begin to use your heads, and begin to plan and prepare, for what is coming? And that seems to be absolutely absent in all the articles you read. It's more and more finger pointing in what we didn't do and what we did do. And okay, it's done. So now what do we do? And I miss that. I mean, I look for that in the newspaper. I don't see it. It's still, going back. How long do we have to go back over and over something that is so dreadful? How much time do we take for that before we begin to think of creative, new, inventive, ways of going forward? Is it a government in exile? I mean, is it an underground? Is it what is it? But do something, Anyway,
I think that they say war is the failure of imagination. And I think that now imagination is going to be what needs to be cultivated. Imagination among us, imagination among the youth,
right.
imagination among women. There are so many women warriors, so many female warriors in so many different walks of life that I don't believe they can take this country back to where it was. I don't think so. Once the freedom has been tasted, it won't be let go of. And I hope that just grows that way. It's hard to know how to respond yet because the other side hasn't gotten started yet. They're still just.
It's hard to respond when you've got some one person who decides, well, women are not they shouldn't be combated. Salaries, in the military. I mean, what about the women who have, like Tammy Duckworth, who's given her legs? She was it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Why do we have to go along with some, was he on Fox News or something? I mean, somebody who knows nothing about, but all of them know nothing about what they're going to be doing anyway. But, what do women do who are in the military suddenly being assigned desk jobs, who have been, leading troops, leading, forces? I mean, what happens? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I say, in philosophy, in American philosophy, in historical philosophy, Hegel pointed to the fact that in history, there's a big pendulum that swings.
Right.
And the pendulum swings, and I believe that during Obama's time, the pendulum swung so far in happy directions that I would say, oh boy, look out, because the pendulum is going to swing back the other way. And the only hope I have is that it ultimately, as it swings, that it's still progressing forward, that we're still making progress, because we can go back. We can fall back.
That's what we're going to do. Yeah.
For the women in Afghanistan, initially when the Afghanis began to organize and silence women, the United States threatened to withdraw all kinds of funding and support for the Afghan government. But they didn't follow through. They still get support from the government, from the U.S. government. And I don't get it. When are we ever going to be able to finally enforce what we say, which is, okay, you want support from this country? Then you need to respect its values. And,
Right.
and if not, then go find your funding somewhere else. But when we
Right.
did that, then there were massive groups of people in Afghanistan who were dying of starvation.
Very scary times.
Well, we shouldn't turn the joy and the exuberance of Psalm 66, Raise a joyful shout to God, all the earth. Sing of the glory of God's name and set forth gloriously God's praise. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. So great is your strength that your foes cower before you. All the earth should bow before you and sing your praise and praise your name in song.
Hallelujah.
God,
Amen.
God's way and God's will win.
And it will rain tomorrow night,
And it will
inshallah.
rain as proof. It will rain finally, and it will end this time of sinful behavior of human beings. Punished by fire in our woods and all those things. Finally, the time of judgment is coming to an end. So let's be on our knees in prayer and sackcloth and be prepared to rise up and walk in the ways of the Lord.
What is sackcloth?
What?
What is
What
it?
is sackcloth?
Sackcloth was used, it's like the potato sack that you know, but it was used in times of mourning. It was drenched in charcoal and in mud, and when you were grieving, you would cover yourself with sackcloth. And because it's coarse, it holds the dirt.
It's like burlap, isn't it?
What's that? Yeah, it's like burlap.
Like burlap.
It is.
And then you put ashes on yourself
Yes.
as well,
Right,
yeah?
ashes.
Yeah.
The burlap would hold the ashes, like it, so it didn't just, it would stay right on you.
Maybe all of those in the resistance should go out on our daily lives in sackcloth and ashes every time they do something awful to us.
Yeah, well, that's every day.
That may come. That may come. Well, it's better than throwing rocks at cop cars.
That's right.
All right, my friends, thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, you.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week.
Okay.
All right.
Good night, all.
Good
Good luck.
night.
Good luck.
Bye to those of you who
Are we not meeting tomorrow?
Yes, he
Yeah.
just means, yeah.